You're the first person that I've said this to publicly.
Mhm.
And up until this point, only the closest people in my inner circle know.
The world is obsessed with fast track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. After nearly 2 decades scaling operations at startup and mid-market technology companies, Liam Darmody jumped headfirst into entrepreneurship by founding Liam's Bandstand, a consultancy through which he helps founders and leaders build magnetic, personal brands that attract clients, talent, and opportunity on LinkedIn. Prior to hanging his own shingle, Liam held leadership positions such as Director of Employee Branding and Talent Marketing at WillowTree, Director of Customer Experience and Product Operations at AddThis, and Director of Sales Planning and Enablement at LivingSocial. In his free time, Liam can be found smoking barbecue low and slow, collecting craft hot sauce for his collection, and geeking out over the latest innovations in technology. Liam resides just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina with his wife and 2 kids. Liam, hello. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I'm wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Why don't we start by having you share what you're up to today?
Sure. I am exploring entrepreneurship. So I started a company called Liam's Brandstand, which helps founders and leaders build personal brands on LinkedIn that attract clients and talent and opportunity. It was born out of a hobby of mine. At 4 years ago, I started posting on LinkedIn on a regular basis. It became a community for me, especially during the pandemic. I'm a wild extrovert. I love networking. I love community. I love being around other people. It energizes me. And so when we were all cooped up in houses, I had 2 toddlers and my wife, who, bless her soul, she loves talking to me, but not that much. And so I needed to find an outlet and have some other conversations with professionals. And LinkedIn was where I turned and did that for 4 years, built a following, had some fantastic opportunities present themselves as a result of that,
Cool.
became super passionate about it. And then the last company I was at got acquired and then had a series of layoffs. And
Mm.
I was deciding, do I jump back into the workforce and go work for somebody else, or do I do my own thing? And my wife again came in and she's a hero. She was like, "You've always wondered if there's something there, if you could make this work. So why don't you just try it?" And I was like,
What a
"Oh, but it's so
supportive
terrifying."
partner.
Yeah. And I was like, "All right, let's do it." So that was 3 months ago. And we're doing it. It's,
Yeah.
it's excitingly terrifying, terrifyingly exciting, but
Yeah.
it is a journey and an adventure, and I'm enjoying it.
Is there anything significant from your childhood, like young teens, pre-young teens, that you think about as it relates to effing up in your career?
I grew up only child. My dad was a hotel executive. He was big suit, big tie, going to the office early every day, coming home late every day, very much focused on climbing the corporate ladder. And I aspired to be that way. And so I think a lot of my childhood, my teenage years, my college years, like I had this perception that you had to climb the ladder. You had to go and work for companies for 20 or 30 years and get to the executive ranks. And that really couldn't be farther from my story. I think that was one of the things that was interesting, is that you never really know where you want to go until you've actually tried a few things. But your parents have such a big influence on what you think you want to do and what you define success
100%.
to be,
Or
right?
or the opposite, what you
Right.
definitely don't want to do.
Exactly. My parents were great in terms of encouraging me to pursue my passions and things like that, but at the same time, also didn't necessarily always risk much. So it was almost like,
Mhm.
if you're not good at math, you probably shouldn't do business. And it's, wait a minute, like maybe I can just do hard things, right? Like, yeah, like instead of getting an international relations degree that I don't use today, like maybe I should have just gotten the D in math or the C in math in college and gone through business. So there was a little bit of that. I think the other thing from my early childhood that's really had an influence on me, and not necessarily in the terms of effing up, but more just how I approach things, is I'll tell a story. My dad and I, we lived in Los Angeles by ourselves in '97. My parents split up. It was a really tough year. I had a really hard go at it. We used to drive around all the houses, like the mansions in Beverly Hills, and just look around and stuff, which probably also played into the whole like climbing the career ladder, being super successful thing.
Yeah.
And one day we're going for a drive and he says, "What's the most important thing in your life?" And philosophical conversations at 13. And I was like, I thought for a second and I was like, human relationships. And
Mm.
he was like, to this day, I almost drove off the road because I was expecting you to say your PlayStation or your Xbox or whatever, your internet. I was such a lonely kid that relationships were everything to me. They meant everything
Mhm.
to me. And so that has been a pervasive thing in my life.
Mhm.
Every place that I've worked, it's been about the people. Every thing that I do, it's about the connection. And I think that's one of the reasons that I am where I am now is that LinkedIn is all about building relationships and networking. And I love it.
Yeah, I'm an only child, and that really resonates. I grew up in the country, didn't have neighbors, so I was this is controversial, but I was sent not for me, but for others who hear it. I was sent to boarding school for high school. It was like magic for me. I came
Oh,
alive
really?
because I had gone to a school with 36 kids from kindergarten through 8th grade.
Yeah.
So now imagine I'm
36?
So now
Wow.
imagine I'm on this campus with
Yeah.
250 kids and I get to live in a dorm and everyone's complaining about curfews. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? Like, we get to all hang out all day long. I don't
Yeah.
understand. This is magical.
That was college for me.
Did you know pretty early on that you would do some form of higher education? When did that kind of set in? How did you decide in international studies?
Uh, so I went to college because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer slash politician.
Oh, interesting.
So I went to American University in DC, changed my mind pretty quickly when I got there. Didn't know what I should do, struggled for honestly, the first year of college, I was like, "I don't wanna be here, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah."
Mm.
And then I eventually just said, like, "My school's good at international relations, so I might as well just take that." And so that's what I studied, and it was interesting, it was fascinating because you learn a lot about different cultures, and you learn about how different cultures communicate, and it was a good program, but it doesn't relate to I haven't used it since I left.
Did you struggle to find a job post college or was that pretty easy?
No, that was super easy. I interned throughout college, I waited tables throughout college. I was, again, very driven to get that job out of school. I couldn't
Yeah.
wait to be a big boy and put on my dress clothes and my loafers and go to work. So I got a job as a recruiter at a startup agency in the area my February of my senior year. And I was so proud of myself. It was a whopping $40,000. And I was like, I got 40 grand. I was like super excited. And I was dead set that I was not going to mess that opportunity up. So I spent more time in the library that semester than any other semester. All my other buddies were like just phoning it
Mhm.
in. And whether they had jobs or not, it was like, I'm done. This is cool. And I was like, nope, definitely not messing that up. Graduated, started working a week later. And in retrospect, I think that was an F up too. I should have taken some time to go visit places and travel a little
Mhm.
bit. It's advice that I would give to folks that are in the earlier stages of their career. There's no rush for the rest of your life to work, right?
Yeah, we wanna
uh,
adult so bad, and then when we start to adult, we're like, "This is terrible."
it's like, why didn't I just enjoy that youth?
Yeah. Your first role was at Attain Group as a
Yep.
recruiter. Curious
Yep.
why you decided to go into recruiting.
So I was one of my best experiences in college was that I was a part of a fraternity. So as an only child, like being in a group of people that were similar minds and doing a lot of the same stuff was really helpful for me. And I fell into a recruiting role within that organization
Mm.
from pretty much the get go. I'm very much a natural born evangelist. If I like something, I will talk about it until I'm blue in the face
Mhm.
and I will try and show you why it's amazing. I assumed that recruiting as a profession was probably pretty similar to just recruiting for your fraternity. And that's not true. It's very different. But it was a learning lesson. And I had a really great interview with my first boss out of college and wanted to help me mentor me, like my hustle mentality. And he was starting up a firm from scratch, which appealed to me as well, because again, like that natural sort of builder in me, it played on that strength and that desire to grow something from nothing to something. And I joined and was there for about a year and a half, learned a lot about myself, about it, recruiting, about agency world.
Why did you leave?
I left because I struggled with the agency model. If somebody's asking me, why should I go work at a place, and I don't have firsthand knowledge as to why they should
Mm.
work at a place, I feel like I'm being insincere. I could say until I'm blue in the face, this is a fantastic culture. And then if the person was to turn around and say, "Have you been there?" I'm like, "No." Like,
Totally.
I'm taking their advice and that's what they say, so it must be true. So that's what I struggled with the most, and one day I just was frustrated and I Googled corporate recruiter jobs in DC, and the first job that popped up was Revolution Health Group, which was a startup that was growing at the time. It was a
Mm.
Steve Case backed startup in the DC area, and they were looking for a corporate recruiter. So I was like, well, let's see what happens. I reached out to the person that was recruiting for the role and started hounding them incessantly to get me in there, and then they did, and that's how I switched out.
And did you find that in-house recruiting suited you better than agency?
Yes. I didn't end up doing it for a very long time because they stopped hiring almost immediately after I started, which was slightly disconcerting, but I did because I could speak passionately to what the vibe was, the culture of the
Mhm.
company. And when you talk to somebody that is in it and has drank as much Kool-Aid as I had drank at the time, and the passion that they have for the experience is totally different as a candidate experience. As a recruiter, you feel a lot more confident in the conversations that you're having. So it was a lot better for me personally.
So you said they stopped recruiting almost immediately after you joined.
Yeah, it was
So
like 2 months in.
so I assume your role became null. Were you worried that you were gonna get kicked out?
I wasn't really at the time. They had $250 million and they were hiring like crazy. They hired like 300 people even before
Mm.
releasing a product. So it was a pretty too too worried about
Very
it.
startup-y.
Yeah, and but I definitely don't like sitting on my hands, right?
Yeah.
I'm the kind of guy that has to be busy, and I said to my boss at the time, who was the VP of HR, I was like, "Everybody is running around here trying to launch this portal, and everybody's busy but me, and I wanna be part of that. Can I just go and find other stuff to do?" She was like, "Yeah, sure, that's no problem." She's, "When we start hiring again, you can come back and we can just put you back in recruiting." And I was like, "Alright, cool." So I taught myself HTML. I went and did some web content management stuff. I helped build out our content management system. I did some product management. I did some project management. And then eventually I ended up getting pulled back into human resource management after a few different shifts in the business. And it was funny because at the time we ended up having a couple rounds of layoffs. And the general counsel, we had removed the SVP of HR role. So the general counsel was like, "You were in recruiting, like you can do HR, right?" And I was like,
Not the same thing.
"Yeah." And at the time I was 26, right? I was the kid that was like tapping the kegs at the startup, not the guy that was like regulating the consumption at the startup. And so I said to him, I was like, "That's just like keeping people happy, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, more or less." I was like, "Okay, cool." And then, yeah, I can do that. And then we continued to have rounds of layoffs and we had an acquisition. And so, yeah, at 26, I had gone through 3 rounds of layoffs that I had to operationalize myself, which was crazy. It was really painful. It being on a journey with people for a couple years, building relationships, working 80 hours weeks, really getting excited about what the company is turning into, and then only to have it the rug kind of be
Evaporate.
pulled out from under
Yeah.
you. It's a really disheartening thing. And to see people being let go was really challenging, to be the one that had to tell them, or I fortunately, I didn't have to tell them directly. I was just the
You
person
had to
that was
set everyone up so that they could tell their
yeah,
people.
like, I had to know who was going before they knew who was going, like, that was brutal for me.
Why did you end up leaving Revolution Health Group?
I actually had to lay myself off.
You put your name on the list, but
Yeah, I got a
by choice or because you were told?
no, yeah, no, I was walking to work one day, and I got a phone call from the VP of HR at the company that had acquired us, and she said, I'm regret to inform you that your position is being eliminated, and we're
And turn
consolidating the
around and walk
function."
back home.
I literally was, "Oh, but I'm jumping up and down because I'm like, I knew what I was gonna get. It was like 3 or 4 months severance, and I was like, "Great, this is awesome. I'm gonna go to Europe, and I'm gonna hang
Mm.
out there for a month and just explore a little bit, do some of the stuff that I didn't do after college." And it's funny because I had just started dating my now wife. We had been on, like, I don't know, maybe
It's so awkward.
3 dates, and, on the
Just lost
3rd
my job. We're gonna be magic together.
yeah, exactly. We literally on our 2nd date, I think I had showed up at the restaurant, and I told her what happened. I ordered an expensive bottle of wine, and I, like, just, "Let's hang." And I don't think I realized, like, she must have thought I was absolutely Looney Tunes, right? And then I'm like, "I think I might just go to Europe for a while," and She tells the story
She's
now.
like, whoa.
Yeah, she was like, "This guy is wacky," and she was like, "I don't think this is gonna materialize in anything." I went off and I did a bunch of stuff, but I kept writing her while I was over there. Like I'd pop into an internet cafe and write
Mhm.
her email. It's like, "How you doing? This is what I've done." And she's like, "It was so weird that like you were still staying in touch with me, so you weren't just like some guy that was like listless and wandering around. Like you actually were thinking about me, which was interesting." And so then we started dating when I got back, and now we're married. We have 2 kids.
I'm curious how you thought about your attractiveness or lack thereof as a candidate post layoff. Were you worried about that?
At the time, I wasn't really because I had a strong network in the DC area. Revolution Health Group was it was a really big deal in the city at the time, so it was attracting a lot of talent from all these different areas, and so I wasn't too worried. I was also too young and too naive to, I think, realize just how much of a stigma there could be about that kind of thing.
Did you find when you were done gallivanting, I joke, when you were
No,
done,
gallivanting is a great word.
when you got back into the market, did you find it difficult to tell that story or that companies had a problem with the story?
I actually didn't have to do it, because the founders of Living Social were all Revolution Health guys. They met at Revolution Health Group. They went off and started their own company, and
Mm,
then one of my good friends was working there, and they were just starting to before Living Social was Living Social, the Daily Deal company. They were a Facebook consultancy, so they helped Fortune 500 companies build applications on Facebook, and they were starting to see some really explosive growth there. So my buddy was there, and he called me up, and he was like, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just hanging out, like, not
hanging
doing
out and
anything."
writing this gal that wants
Yeah,
to do it to me.
just submitting resumes and making girls think I'm insane. And he was like, "We're going through a lot of growth right now. You want to just
Mm,
come in and hang out and do some data moderation and stuff like that?" And I was like, I don't know." He's like, What else are you gonna do? Sit on your butt and unemployment?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like,
pretty sweet
"No."
gig.
Yeah, he was like, "No." He's, "We'll pay you more than unemployment will pay. Come in and hang out, do some stuff, whatever." And that was April of 2009.
Mm,
And I was there for a little while in an intern capacity. That's where I discovered Groupon that was doing the sort of daily deal thing in the beginning, and I actually exchanged emails with their CEO at one point, and he was like, "I want people to be in Chicago." So I was like, "I don't wanna move to Chicago yet." I just started dating this girl. I don't think I realized how much my
you
now
were
wife
really putting a lot of weight on that.
it was weird, right? I was like, yeah, like, it was like, I don't think I realized that. It's sketchy at the time. But anyways,
Right.
yeah, so then the CEO of Living Social decided that they wanted to do the same thing, and he was like, "You're the brightest eyed, bushiest tailed here. You wanna come on full time?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's great." So I just joined. So I didn't have to worry about it that much. But I think at the time, just to answer your question more broadly, I do think that there was a big stigma associated with it, and I think we've seen a big shift in the last 2 decades from layoffs being something that candidates felt ashamed of to layoffs being just part of business, and it's not personal. It's personal for the person that's affected,
Sure.
right? But like
Yeah.
it's a business decision, and it's not a reflection of the person as much as it is just the status of the company and the management. And I'm glad to see that has subsided a bit.
Same.
It's tough, and it's tough out there. It's tough being on LinkedIn and seeing all these people posting
Oh
about
my
it. But
God, it's awful.
5 years ago, people wouldn't post about it,
Mm,
right? It was like, "Oh, I'm terrified to admit it. I don't really wanna acknowledge it. In interviews, I don't wanna say I was let go." It was a stigma,
for
and
sure.
I'm glad that's not.
I wonder if LinkedIn could run some sort of algorithm to pull out who are the first like 10 people that posted and started
Oh,
this
that'd be really
movement. Wouldn't that be
yeah, that
cool?
would be interesting.
Yeah, that'd
Totally.
be really cool. They should get some credit. Anyway, so coincidentally, you're like the third or fourth person that I've interviewed from Living Social. Emily Ellis, a wolf. It's just ironic.
That's awesome. I work with Tessa and Emily on the sales enablement team there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Living Social was incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
such
Well,
a wild ride.
that's what I was gonna say. So it's gonna look like I'm like a super fan of Living Social, and that's not at all. It's ironic. But so I bring this up to share. They both shared the experience at Living Social was very much like lightning in a bottle. It was this
Mm,
magical,
yes.
encapsulated experience, a moment in time, and it's been extremely hard to get that same feel and experience ever since. Does that resonate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I cannot really put into words what that experience was like. Just the explosive nature of the business, the excitement of it. I was the 20th employee there, so I was in
Oh,
pretty
wow.
early, and it was just like, okay, we're gonna launch 25 markets next week, and you got to coordinate with 50 different salespeople in all these different markets, and you've got to figure out how to get them launched. You got to make sure they got the deals. You got to make sure they get pricing. We're talking about consumer behavior. Like I know more about the right price for keratin hair straightening than any man should. Like it's insane, but it was amazing. It was like you were creating a whole new category of commerce.
Yeah.
And having grown up in the hospitality industry, and my wife was also in the restaurant industry, I'm a big foodie, so working with small businesses was really appealing. But yeah, just the attractive nature of the business, just talent from everywhere. Everybody
Mhm.
wanted to work there. We had ball pits and all sorts of different crazy stuff, and just a really fantastic time. And yeah, it's almost impossible to find it twice. In the valley, you can probably do it, right? Like you
If
have a
you're
lot
lucky.
more
Yeah.
likelihood of hitting one
Maybe not
twice.
today.
Maybe not today, but but the concentration of companies that have similar
Yeah.
cultures probably is a lot higher there than it is in, say, DC or in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am now. But that's okay. When you're going through something like that, it's easy to become a little bit unrealistic, right?
Yeah.
Is what we're doing actually, is it just hype or is it legit? Is it a staid business model or is it just hype?
Right.
And
At employee 20, you started before it hit the peak. You rode the roller coaster up
yep,
and then you rode the roller coaster down.
yep.
I'm curious how the down experience was.
The down was really tough. One of the biggest challenges for me at Living Social was that I became addicted to that feeling of being early and
Mhm.
growing, like orders of magnitude growing, right? One minute you're in 10 markets, the next minute you're in 20, the next minute you're in 50, the next minute you're in 250. That growth for me was addicting. And so as the business started to grow and scale, you started to have bigger teams, you started to have layers of management. So I was sitting at 28 managing a team of 50 people with 4 directs under me, and they each had teams of 8 or 10 and on 2 coasts, which was, in retrospect, a phenomenal experience for me to have. But at the time, I hated it. I was like, this is not this is just me sitting around. I went into my boss's office and I was like, "I didn't do anything today." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "I didn't do anything today." And he said, "Did somebody on your team ask you for help doing their job?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you give them that answer?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That then you did your job." He's like, "Your doing is different as a leader than it is," yeah,
Yeah.
right? It's time to, put the football, pick up the headset, and be the coach. And that was hard for me because I was so used to the hustle and grind. I was, like, used to building
Yeah.
my own team's desks, and everything was just, like, I took pride in the 80 hours a week and
Yeah.
sleeping at the office and whatever. And so I was always very unsettled. And I left that role eventually to travel internationally because I wanted to help our international teams level up. When we acquired companies, I would drop into the country and help them
That's
with sales
cool.
and operations best practices. Yeah, great. For a 20-year-old, like, traveling around, it was super cool. I spent a bunch of time in Australia and the UK and Spain and France and had a lot of fun with it, but also was unsettled, and then came back to the North American operation and joined the operations team again and ran a small tactical team internally there that was trying to get strategic initiatives out the door, and then eventually ended up in sales planning and enablement again. And then it just started once the CEO announced that he was ready to leave. Like, that's when it was like, okay, this must not be what we thought it's going to be. And it was very deflating when Groupon went public, and I was just doing some math, and I was looking at my options, and I was like, wow, like, I could start looking at Maseratis if I wanted to. And it was nothing like that. Maybe I could
Yeah.
get a Vespa, but I wasn't driving any fancy Italian cars at any point in time. And I think that's okay. But it was a very disheartening experience. And I knee jerked to find that again,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons that,
And
2015 ended up being one of the most challenging years in my life, is that I was just listless. I was like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to be. I don't know when I
yeah.
want to do it. And that was a real challenge.
It resonates with me when you're at a startup and you just go up into the right, both the company and your career,
Yep.
right? You started as this junior person. You're now super senior. You've done all these things. You couldn't get that experience over a lifetime.
Yeah.
And when you go from that tactical player to that leader, it's so deflating. to
Yeah.
your point earlier, I really struggled with it. I love to coach. I love to manage people and help them and strategize. But at the end of the day, I love checking boxes. I
Yeah.
love grinding. And I felt so unworthy
Yes.
at that point. I just, it was like identity crisis. And I was like,
100%.
what do I do now? Do I get myself demoted? Like, how do I find that again? And someone said to me recently that they were told that when you get to that level, you just have to keep something, like, don't delegate something that you really love so you can
Yeah.
continue to still do that. And I'm like, yeah, but then your people think that you don't trust them. Like,
Right.
why won't you share that one thing that happens to be what everyone else really wants to do as well?
Yep.
Was like a crummy experience. I was like, I wanted so badly to get to that point in my career. And I got there and I was like, this sort of sucks. What now?
Totally can relate to that. And I think it's especially common with people that work at startup companies because especially when you're working closely with founders in an early stage company, middle management is not a consideration. You're like, everybody's going to put in their time and they're going to do the work and we're going to just get it done together. We're not going to worry about whose job is what and
Right,
what your
right.
goal is, whatever. Like, we're just all in. So, growing up, I say growing up, I grew up a lot in that company,
Of
right?
course. Absolutely.
And growing up there, I was of the mindset that management was just not a thing. Like it's almost like garage bands are like, that band's sold out. But like you start a garage band with the hope of being famous someday.
Yeah.
And then you get there and it's, oh, did I sell out? But is it really that bad? It's that feeling of I'm just not doing enough. But what I've come to realize now is that what you're doing, like my my boss said, is different, right? Like
Mm,
mentoring other people and helping them do their job, helping them feel good about doing their job and how important an effective leader is. I now have that. Like, I love leading people. It's
mm,
one of the reasons that solopreneurship, I think, honestly, long term is probably not my long term thing because, like,
mm.
I miss the energy that I get from mentoring others, from feeding off of each other, like the energy of it. Um,
It's also the agency versus in-house for you right now too. Like you're your own
yes,
agency.
yes, 100%.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, begging people to talk to you is different than having people in your sphere that want to collaborate with you on a daily basis. It's a very
Yeah.
different approach to business.
Talk to me about that period of time after Living Social. You said you traveled a bit. There is a gap. It looks like about 8 months between Living Social and AddThis. So talk to me about that time. And
Yeah.
were there challenges and struggles during that time, or was it a easy breezy? Oh, I get to travel the world, and yay, I'm
Oh,
hopping
man.
back in.
No, so there actually wasn't a gap. There's a gap on my LinkedIn that I didn't put the 2 jobs that I had there, but I need your. I got to a point in 2015 where I was leading another again, I had a team of 35 people and multiple different functions were in my group. And I just kept thinking to myself, am I damaged goods if I stay here any longer? Or what are people going to think about the fact that I stayed at Living Social for as long as I did when they were not going to be going anywhere? And so I convinced myself that I wanted to be the person on the ground for a Silicon Valley company in DC. And so there was a car sharing company that was launching in the market. I interviewed for the position, I got the role very quickly within about a month of joining. There was some practices at the company that I just was not aware of and was not really cool with. And
Been
so,
there.
and at the same time, like I was also like, I had gone so far back in the other direction where it was like somebody's tire busted on Route 1 at 1 in the morning. Go fix it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, that's way
I
in the
want to
other
be in
direction.
the weeds, but not those
Yeah,
guys.
that's those. Yeah, those weeds were too deep. And I ended up deciding to leave, found another company that was the polar opposite, a phenomenal organization. They were launching a market in the DC area, and I went through I interviewed with 18 people for the position. It was a market manager position, and it was a career platform for engineering talent and product talent. And I was like, "That's great, like, it's in my wheelhouse, I like talent, there's a team here, we'll be good." And I think I let myself convince myself that I wanted to do sales because I love the company and I love the leadership and I love the people that I had met and I love the product.
Mm.
So yeah, I can do this. Realistically speaking, do you really want to go and try and sell into Capital One and Fortune 500 companies? Like you don't have any sales experience. You don't really enjoy the sales process.
Mm.
So are you sure you want to do that? After interviewing all those people and they were like, yeah, if you think you can do it, if they thought I could do it, then I must be able to do it. And I probably could do it, but do I want to do it? And am I any good at it? And I
Do I
wasn't good.
like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I like it? And I wasn't. And as any good company, within 3 months, they were, this is not for you. So let's just sever ties and you go on your way
Mm.
and whatever. So that was a real eye opener for me because it forced me to really say, what do you want? Right? Don't just, you have to like, what are you chasing? You're
Mm.
chasing this lightning in a bottle that was Living Social, and you're trying to replicate that, but it's so hard to replicate that. And so instead, focus on what you actually really do want to do and with people that you want to do it with. And that's how I ended up at AddThis, is that my first boss out of college had worked at AddThis when it was Clear Spring, which was a prior company. They changed names. And I had another friend who had worked there, and they had a job opening for a client operations manager. And a buddy of mine reached out and was like, "Hey, man, like this looks like it could be a good fit for you. And I know a bunch of the guys there, so I'll just put a good word in for you if you want to do it." So I did, and that's how I ended up there.
Mm. I'd like to double click on the last role you talked about where you were there for a short period and they
Yep,
came to you and they were like, look, this isn't working.
yep,
It sounds like you were pretty aware that it
yep,
was not what you wanted.
yep.
But when it came time to them approaching you and saying, thanks, take care, how did that feel?
It was terrifying, but also there was a relief in a
Mm.
way. You know how if you're holding in a secret and you just let it out, it's cathartic.
Yeah.
That was what that was like. To their credit, my boss flew to DC to deliver the news in person. And I remember on Friday, we were emailing back and forth, and I said, "Should I set up dinner for Monday when you come?" And she was like, "No, I don't think we're going to do dinner." She was pregnant, but she was
Jeez.
like, "I'm tired. I probably won't have the energy for it." And I knew then, I was like, okay, like Monday's my last day here. I think I was mostly disappointed in myself
Mm.
because I thought I knew myself better than that. And so I was like, oh, is my career over? I legitimately thought that I had ruined everything I'd done until that point.
Mm.
Wow, like you were let go from a position, you got yourself into this mess. You've basically just completely undone everything you worked hard for up until this point. At that point, I was
Mm.
10 years out of college,
Mhm.
and I had worked at 4 companies. Now people job go to different jobs every 2 years, but, like, back then, it wasn't necessarily the case.
No.
So I was really nervous, and I was really terrified, and I was really beating on myself. Went to a therapist, start
Mm.
talking to them about just my anxiety and, like, getting to know who I am. And one of the things that was really interesting about going through therapy is that, and I had gone through therapy before because my parents had a rocky marriage, and so they always had me talking to therapists just to make sure that, like, their mess ups weren't messing up me too much, which was good. I appreciate that. Didn't fully
We have a
work, but,
lot of
like
similarities.
didn't fully work, but I would probably be far worse if they hadn't. And the therapist said after a series of sessions, she was like, "You have an attachment to this Living Social job that is essentially the same as being in a long-term relationship with somebody you really love.
Oh.
And it ended for you, and you've been searching for it since."
Pacing, yeah.
And I
Ooh.
was like, "Wow, I never really thought about a job that way." But it makes a lot of sense, right? You sink so much of your time and your passion and your energy into something, and then it's just one day gone. Even if I left it, but, like,
Yeah.
the Living Social that I knew was no longer, and everybody that I knew had moved on for the most part, and that was really eye-opening for me, and it helped me forgive myself for the subsequent mess ups, for the starts and stops that I had afterwards, and say, "You know what? You lost your footing, and that's okay. You're human," right? Like,
Yeah.
people lose their footing, and
Yeah.
that's okay, and so,
This too shall pass.
yeah, that's it. You know.
I'm noting that you never used the word fired. And in fact, it took you a couple minutes of discussing it to use let go. I use
Yep.
air quotes.
Yep. It's a scary word.
Is that, yeah, is that intentional, or you feel like this is just how we're wired? You build a story and you want to craft it so that you can not feel shameful
This is great.
part.
Look,
Eh,
I'll tell you, you're the first person that I've said this to publicly.
mm,
And up until this point, only the closest people in my inner circle know that I was fired. Some people could put the dots together, but you're the first person that I've told. And I think the reason for that is because the nature of this podcast and what it is about and the audience that you're targeting and the message you're trying to send across, it would be unfair for me not to,
mhm.
but it does feel unnatural to do. And so
Really
when you
sticky,
go through this
uncomfortable.
story and you're like, "Oh, it didn't work out." It didn't work out. What does that mean? If somebody probes, "Did you leave? It was a mutual decision." No, it wasn't mutual. I wouldn't stop giving myself a paycheck if I didn't have to, but it was the right decision. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I think is challenging in business is that we identify with what we do too much.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, makes it a lot harder for us to acknowledge the fact that if something's not working out, it's just not working out, and it's better to cut the ties.
Yeah.
And
Honestly, they gave you a gift
yeah,
and themselves a gift. It's not that you weren't qualified or aren't a great candidate.
yeah,
You just weren't in the right place and time
correct.
for that opportunity. I have to say, even as the host, I'm like, I have this question. I want to ask it. What it's God, do I tell them I'm about to get provocative? Like,
No, no, you
how, how
totally
how do I ask the question? But I'm just saying, it's even uncomfortable for me because
right.
I know I'm about to expose you,
Yeah,
and thinking about what it feels like to be in your shoes, because I've been in your shoes,
yeah,
really uncomfortable.
yep,
It's shameful. You don't want people to know because you want people to think you're successful.
yep,
And if you admit to these shortcomings, then all of a sudden you're not successful. And that's just not how it works. It's not a checkbox. It's a look of where you've been, where you're going,
yep,
and you are successful. And that moment actually set you up for your success.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that,
Thank
and
you
I
for
think
sharing.
thanks for pushing me to, and thanks for calling that out. As I was talking to you about it, I was like, say the word fired, just say it." Like in my head, it's you just do it. And some of this has to do with kind of my maturity and evolution in the last couple of years, and I bring it back to LinkedIn because there's a stigma associated with people posting content on LinkedIn. They're like, "What if my boss sees it? What I don't have enough value to offer. Nobody cares what I have to say." And it doesn't happen on other social platforms because those are all safe spaces where like your friends are following you, so they know
Right.
you already. On LinkedIn, you're a little more vulnerable, and there's people that are all over the world can see what you put out there. And I got to a point where I just started thinking to myself, if I am truly unabashedly myself on the platform and people get a sense for how I think, how I communicate, what I'm strong, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, it will do one of two things. It will attract them and they will want to talk more and engage more, and they might lead to an opportunity,
Yeah,
or it'll detract them. And if it detracts them, then it spares them and me the time and headache of going through that dance
that's
of
right.
are you a good fit? Are you not a good fit? I don't ever want to have another situation like that where
Yeah,
I go through 18 rounds of interviews and they're convinced that I can do it, or at least convinced enough to give me a shot. And I'm like, if they think so, then I should do it, only to be like, this sucks.
yeah. If we're in Vegas, I would put all my money on that everyone who listens to this and hears this bit of it, they will not have the feeling of, "Oh, he couldn't make it. What a loser," whatever. They will all feel like, "Oh my God, I identify with this. He's real. This
Mm,
makes me feel validated," because we all have our little things that
That's
happen during our career that we're hiding, and
mhm,
we just so badly want to feel normal in our experience. So they're going to hear you say it and go, it's going to be a release for them, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
finally someone was willing to say the thing that I'm not.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's honestly what I think is so important about the human side of business becoming more prevalent because we are all just on a journey and we're trying to do our best. And you can't go for 4 decades with a perfect record. It's impossible. And you
It's
know,
like driving without getting a speeding ticket. It's not possible.
I use the analogy too a lot of a baseball player. If you're a baseball player and you hit a 300 average, like you're a good baseball player. If
Mm,
you hit 500 average, you're a star. But that still means you're missing 50% of the balls that come your way. And that's just part of it.
that's a
And
good point.
so I'm not saying that everybody has to go out and get fired, but if it does happen to you, you should reflect on it
Mm,
and learn from it and understand, okay, what happened there? Where did I fall short? What was that? What was the motive? What was the reason for that?
yeah.
And learn from it.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, happy to.
So you moved on to AddThis. Were there any challenges that you faced, any learning curves during that time?
Initially, the role that I was hired for, it didn't seem like it was super well defined. And I had to work across different functions to try and figure out how I was going to be able to weave my way into it a little bit. Then we got acquired by Oracle, which was I did not expect to work for a 85,000 person company by going there. They had 100 employees, which was like my sweet spot. And so that sort of changed things up a little bit.
Of
My role
course.
shifted into more of a customer success role. And then there was a customer experience team that was led by somebody else. And I ended up taking that team on as well because the president of AddThis was not really super happy with where it was at the time and needed some stronger leadership to get in there and course correct things a bit. So I did. And the biggest challenge for me there was that I wasn't building something from scratch.
Mhm.
I was used to building from scratch, and I was comfortable building from scratch.
Yeah. This was more like maintenance mode.
And this was an established business. They had 15 million customers that were using their tools, and they'd been around for about 10 years.
Why did you end up leaving?
I ended up leaving because I had gotten to a point where I had done what I think I could do there.
You were tired of
A
corporate America.
little bit, yeah. And I also was recruited by somebody that I used to work with at LivingSocial who was working at Homesnap, and they had a position open for a director of revenue operations. And so that's interesting. It'd be good to go work with them again. And there were a couple people from LivingSocial that were there as well as this person. Again, you follow
Yeah.
your network around. And I had interviewed with another company at that time as well. And both just startups that were still earlier in the building phase, right? They weren't owned by the Fortune 10.
Yeah.
And so a little bit more my speed, and so that's why I went to Homesnap.
Mm. And was it a better fit?
Yes, absolutely. I had a team there, small but mighty. It was about 7 or 8 people. It wasn't traditional revenue operations in the beginning. It was a mishmash, which is what I've made a career doing anyways. Like I look at my resume and my background, and I'm kinda like, "What are you?" And I've said that to people. Like, I've had conversations with people where they're like, "What do you do?" And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Honestly,
because you've like HR, customer,
yeah."
sales, operations. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I find companies that I like with people that I think are cool, that are doing good stuff, and I just go in and get shit done.
Yeah.
And that's somehow I've strung together a career out of that. And it's not linear and it's not the corporate structure of climbing the ladder. But at the same time, it's a lot of startups that doesn't work, right? Like, you got a lot of people that you bring out of these big organizations to work at startups, and they're like, I want to work at a startup because it's cool. And then they get there and they're like, what do you mean I got to drink from 17 different fire hoses,
There's
right?
no
Like,
structure. What?
exactly.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? And so I just want you to get it done. So that for me felt more comfortable. I felt more at home there. And we were building a sales team from scratch. I had done that before. There was a sales director that had been hired who I got along really well with. So it was good. And I really enjoyed my time there, and the people there were fantastic.
And what drew you to leave that?
We were acquired.
Another acquisition
Yeah,
bites the dust.
we were acquired. And at the time when we were acquired, everybody was working remotely. It was the pandemic.
Mm,
And I thought, if we're talking about moving to North Carolina because we want to be closer to grandparents, now's probably the time to do it. So we decided to make that move. And it was good because the company that acquired us didn't really want to have remote employees. They wouldn't have let me move, I don't think, if the management of the bigger organization had gotten deeper into the organization at that
interesting.
point.
Yeah.
So the timing was fortuitous. And then WillowTree reached out to me about a revenue operations position. And then I went and interviewed with them, and I interviewed with their CMO. And he was like, I think you could probably do this job, but I have this role that I haven't really defined yet, but I think you would be really good at it. And I was like, okay, I'm listening. And he's like, we're trying to put together an outbound recruiting team, like an outbound sourcing slash talent marketing organization. Up until that point, WillowTree had primarily relied on inbound applications for all of their staffing needs. So they didn't really do a ton of sourcing or outbound recruiting. And this chief marketing officer put his hand up and said, I'll stand up an operation that does this, like a recruiting engine, because they had plans to hire hundreds of engineers and product managers. And like, they're not just standing around waiting for work, right? Like back then, this was 3 years ago. So he said, we want to build this talent marketing organization. And based on your experience with sales operations, I think it could be a good fit for you. They don't have a job description or anything. This is what it would pay. And I think you'd be great at it. And I was like, employer branding. I was like, I don't do employer branding. What are you talking about? He was like, you do it every day. I said, what do you mean? He's like, you're doing it on LinkedIn every day. I've seen you. I've been following you for 6 months. I was like, oh, he's like, just do that for us. That's it. And I was like, okay. And it wasn't that simple of a conversation, but it was like, in a way,
Yeah.
he was just like, have some faith in yourself, dude. Like, it's not that different than what you're doing for your own brand. And that's when the light bulb went off that, oh, wow, LinkedIn it's good to spend time there. It's good to
Yeah.
let people see what your passions are. And yeah, we stood up this operation that was essentially, we called it Shop Talks, and we invited candidates to have conversations with people at our company that were doing the role that they would be in if they joined. So instead of funneling them through the recruiting organization, we set up this elaborate sort of structure to say, have a quick 30-minute powwow with somebody on the team and then decide, do you want to apply to the position or not? And
Fascinating.
the response from the market on that was incredible. I had engineers that were messaging me being like, this is the most forward-thinking recruiting tactic I've seen. I love it. It's great. It was something different, something new,
Mm.
and it was exciting. So we did that, and then we got acquired.
Gosh.
There's a trend there, yeah. And then 6 months after that, there were some layoffs, and I was recruiting and marketing together, which, like, usually the first to go in one of those departments. If you're doing both, you're probably on the block. But to WillowTree's credit, they were generous with package, and so it gave me the runway to start what I'm doing now. Again, layoffs is one of those things that I don't take them as personally as I think a
Yeah.
lot of people do, because they suck all around. There's so many different moving parts in business,
Mm.
and it's not ever like a personal decision where it's like, oh yeah, we don't like that Liam guy, get him out of here. It was the opposite.
So when you were laid off, you didn't have any worries?
I certainly had worries. I was like, what am I
Okay.
going to do now? Like my background, like all that anxiety floods back in, but I didn't take it personally.
Instead of what did I do wrong? Why me? What could I have done better? It's okay, this sucks, but now I need to focus. How am I going to provide for my family? What am I going to do? Will I find something else? How did that anxiety manifest for you?
So I was super excited about launching Liam's brand stand. And I arrogantly and naively thought that because I had this large following and because I had been building up this like knowledge of LinkedIn for a long time, that I would have customers for months just begging to pay me money to talk about this. And I had a few customers, but it certainly wasn't months. It was more like a handful, like one handful. And I think that was really deflating for me. It was a bit of a bruise to the ego, but it's also a learning opportunity, right? Like I have never been at the very top of the funnel from a marketing standpoint. So that's all new to me. I'm doing this for the first time. I'm like, I got to get the message out there. I got to be talking about LinkedIn all the time. Like I
Mm.
have a lot of friends who have done what I'm doing now for years. And a lot of them are saying your messaging is not targeted enough. You're sharing one day a week, you'll talk about LinkedIn, but then the other 3 or 4 days a week, you're talking about something you read about technology or AI or your family or barbecue or hot sauce or whatever. They're like, what are you? That's a great question. That's good feedback. So now I post a lot more about LinkedIn because I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands this is what I'm doing now and shifting the
Mm.
perspective that I'm not just here to talk about stuff for fun. I'm here because I also want to make money. And
Yeah.
so that's been an adjustment. It's certainly anxiety inducing. There's not a day that goes by that I don't have doubts in my head and that I don't think, am I doing something wrong? Is this the wrong thing to be doing? But then something will come along and you'll close a deal or you'll sign a client or you get an inbound and it's okay, cool. I'm going to shove that anxiety in a box for a little bit, be in this
Mhm.
moment, and then it'll come back out when it's ready, which is usually shorter
What
than you
is
think.
life without a little anxiety, right?
Exactly. It builds character.
Looking back at your career, what would you identify as the low point?
It was definitely that year after LivingSocial because I just was so confused about what I wanted and to a certain extent who I was. I had identified with that business so much and it became my identity. I was so caught up in it and I almost ignored paying attention to my own progression as a human being because I was just so wrapped up in that.
Mm.
Lost myself a little bit. And that is the hardest part of a professional is that where's that line, right? Personal and professional, like they're blending more now than ever. But at the same time, somehow you have to separate how you view yourself as a professional versus how you view yourself personally. And I was really lost that year. It doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And I certainly believe in
Mm.
that mantra.
Were there moments in your career where you gave more to work than to personal and that got in the way?
Yeah. Certainly in the first 10 years of my career, it was my identity. I was the startup guy. I was 80 hours a week. I was dating my wife and I would work until 10 o'clock at night and then I'd metro to her place and just flop on the bed and fall asleep. And she's like, why do you even come here? I'm like, I want to
Because
see
remember,
you.
I was your stalker back in the
Yeah,
day.
exactly. I actually never left. I've been outside of your window the whole time. No, she's like, why don't you just go home? And I was like, I still want to see you. And yeah, but you're not like not really much fun when you get here. Like you just conk out. And then I'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, checking emails to make sure they were delivering on time. And she was just like, this is insane. I'm surprised that she married me, to be honest. But I've since changed my ways and have a lot more balance. And I think that's important. But I also think that business is evolving too a little bit more.
Yeah,
I think there's a
for
lot more
sure.
conversation around mental health. There's conversation
Oh,
about
yeah. What was
balance.
mental health back when we were kids growing up?
Yeah.
In a work culture, forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Nobody
Yeah,
would talk openly about talking to a therapist. Like,
no
you're like,
way.
"That's career suicide." In my mind, it's always been, I see a doctor for my general health. I see a dentist for my dental health. I care more about my brain and my heart than I do my teeth. So, like,
Yeah,
why wouldn't I see a therapist when I'm going through rough times or even just in general? I don't see
yeah.
one now, but I'm not opposed to it. I like that. It's good to talk to people that are professionals, get help if you need it. I think it shows self awareness and a progressive mindset. So, I'm
Mm.
glad that business is catching up a bit on that front.
If you could go back and speak to your sub 20-year-old self, what would you say?
Follow your heart and your fascination, pursue your passions. Don't worry so much about what you think you need to do, what you want to do, especially in that early stage of your career where it's like you don't have kids, presumably, you don't have a ton of responsibility. You only have to really look out for yourself. There's nothing you can't really bounce back from. Explore and
Mm.
try different things and do the stuff that you think would actually light you up every day
Mm.
irrespective of what it pays, irrespective of titles, irrespective of climbing the corporate ladder. You got the rest of your life to do that. Find yourself, find what lights you up. And not what lights you up forever. It's what lights you up in that moment and spend some time doing that for a while and see where that leads because that'll lead to something else. And then you'll find something else to do. I was in such a hurry to grow up and to do what I thought I needed to do. I think I robbed myself a little bit of that freedom.
Yeah, that resonates. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. How do you define success?
Success is being happy and fulfilled genuinely, not exterior pressure. It's the feeling that you get when you have 2 kids that love you and that you're spending
Mm.
time at home. It's the feeling that you get when you have a level of self-confidence in your personality and who you are and that you're a good person and you're doing good things in the world. 20 years ago, I would have told you something totally different. I
Yeah.
would have told you success is being in the executive suite at a big company with a big title and big cars and big this and big that. That's not success to me.
What was your dream job as a young child?
I wanted to be a lawyer. When I was really young, I wanted to be a police officer. I had an alter ego named Officer Paul until I decided that I didn't like the letter U, and then I changed it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
weird,
do
right?
it.
And then I was a big Law and Order guy. I wanted to go to Harvard Law School, and then I wanted to be a lawyer.
What 3 words would you use to describe your career?
Fantastic question. Enlightening would be one. I've learned a lot about myself at
Mm.
the because of the things that I've done in my career. Exciting, challenging. I mean, that
I love that.
it's okay to have challenges in your
Mm.
career. Nothing's always sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
There's going to be all sorts of stumbles and roadblocks. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to have a challenging career.
Mm.
even if that challenge means getting whacked from a job or not necessarily knowing what you're going to do next. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, makes you a little tougher.
Mm. How has stress most typically manifested for you? Physically, mentally?
I started relying on food as a comfort when I was a kid.
Mm.
My parents started going through their troubles. There was this burger joint near my house in Canada, Angelo. He had A&D burgers, and I ate a burger and fries every day at his place. He was like my Uncle Angelo. And like I would go there
Yeah.
all the time, and I just had such comfort in that moment. And that stuck with me much of my career. I'm finally really focusing on my health. I just turned 40 and I'm down 40 pounds. It's always been that thing. Anxiety and imposter syndrome are two other things that are big. I am incredibly hard on myself. I once worked with a good friend of mine who we were golfing one day and he was like, dude, nice shot. That was awesome. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, do you realize that you are incapable of accepting a compliment? And I was like, what do you mean? You can't do it. Just say thanks. That moment really resonated with me because it's true. My first instinct is always to downplay any achievement that I have and to say
Mm.
it's not good enough and we
Yeah.
don't necessarily fully deserve it. And I think a lot of that has to do with my upbringing a little bit. And so that's how it manifests. It's like you're constantly doubting yourself.
What is the company on your resume that turns the most heads?
LivingSocial.
Mm.
Anybody who's been around for 10 or 15 years sees the fact that I was the 20th employee and I've seen a thing or two. I got an MBA at that company,
For
basically.
sure. Oh,
Right. And
and
like
then
the
some. Yeah.
lessons that I've learned and the people that I met and like the experiences that I had, it's priceless. And even if it didn't turn out to be what we were all thinking it might end up being at some point, I don't regret it at all. And
Yeah.
it helped me a tremendous amount.
Shows resilience. I'd like you to take 3 labels: love, ultimate fun, skip, and take 3 of your jobs and apply those labels.
Ultimate fun was LivingSocial. 6 years there. I had the ride of a lifetime. Love was Revolution Health Group.
Mm.
Because it was my first time working at a startup and it was my first time unleashing myself
Mm.
to be there.
Mm.
Skip is the company I ended up getting fired from
Mm.
because there was a lot of shame that came from that for me. The fact that I didn't know myself well enough to not pursue that opportunity really irks me to this
Mhm.
day.
I had such a great time
Me
chatting with
too.
you, and
I hope we talk more.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reiner. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.